I threw my backpack over my shoulder as I said goodbye to my friends. Another great day at school. Now I just had to find my brother so we could go home. I was starving because I had given my lunch money to a kid who forgot his. I figured that act of kindness would feel much better than buying food for myself, and it sure was. I spotted my brother leaning against the car we shared. A cute girl approached him smiling, but he said something and she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I figured she mistook him for me. We're identical twins after all. Hey there, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more. It only takes a second and we really appreciate it. As soon as we got home, I went to the kitchen to say hi to my parents, while my brother Evan went up to his room as always. It smells fantastic. Did you guys make pizza from scratch? I asked my mom as soon as the amazing aroma filled my nose. I hugged her and did my special handshake with my dad. I then set the table and called my brother down to come eat.
So, how was school? Levi? Evan?
My dad asked me and my brother. I started telling them about my classes that day, but my dad kept looking at Evan.
Evan, I asked you about your school day,
said my dad sternly.
What are you nagging me for? That's supposed to be Mom's job,
replied my brother. My dad instantly looked annoyed. Evan just knew how to push his buttons. They started shooting snarky remarks at each other until their voices got higher and they were full of arguing. I exchanged looks with my mom, who looked upset, as she always did when Dad and Evan argued, which was often.
Why can't you be more like Levi?
Shouted my dad.
What's your problem with me?
Evan shouted back. My mom set her cup down roughly on the table, grabbing their attention. She looked annoyed too, but then she put on a sweet smile.
Evan, when is your next swimming competition, darling?
She asked. The atmosphere quickly changed. That was the one thing my parents didn't fight with Evan about. He's a fantastic swimmer. I was laying in bed later that evening when my parents came into my brother and I's room to say goodnight. My dad sat down next to Evan's bed and started asking him about his competition, which was in 2 days. They could talk about this for hours. Hey Dad, I wanted to ask you about how you applied to college because I began, but I was interrupted by my dad saying,
I'll be right there, son. Give me a minute.
Then turning to talk to Evan again. I waited and waited for my dad to be done, but I eventually fell asleep waiting. This was normal. Their attention was always on me except for the days before Evan's competitions. I usually didn't care, but now I was flooded with college applications and I needed my parents for advice, now more than ever. The next day, I was getting tired of my parents giving me none of their time because they were so focused on Evan. I knew it wasn't his fault and that I'm old enough to know how to share, but I was getting annoyed at him. This is only because of your competition, you know. That's the only reason they don't fight with you right now, I said to him when we were both in our room.
You're jealous you're not their favorite son right now, aren't you?
He asked with a smirk. I wanted to punch his stupid face, which unfortunately was my face too. They'll forget about you after tomorrow, I snapped at Evan. He gave me a look of pure hatred. I had seen it before, usually when he fought with Mom and Dad and I diffused the situation perfectly. He envied me, I could tell. I went to the bathroom to get ready for bed, then came back to find everything normal, except one tiny thing stood out. The clothes I had left on my desk chair were gone. They were dirty though, since I had worn them all day, so I figured Mom took them to the laundry. I went to bed, not psyched for my brother's competition the next day. I was sitting in the damp bleachers of the pool next to my parents, who were both holding signs with my brother's name on them. Psh, what's 2 little signs compared to the dozens they've made for me throughout the years? The competition was supposed to begin 5 minutes ago, but nothing. Another 5 minutes passed and people were getting impatient. There was one swimmer missing, Evan's biggest rival. Suddenly we heard sirens and cops threw the doors open. I wondered who they were stalking towards, but soon enough, they were forcing me to stand up and handcuffing me. They gave me the whole, "You have the right to remain silent" speech, but I barely heard it. I was nauseous. What the heck? What was I being arrested for? My parents looked like they had seen a ghost. My brother looked shocked, but slightly happy. I was just confused and honestly scared to death. They put me in an interrogation room where I waited for hours until a detective came in to talk to me. What's happening? What am I arrested for? I demanded to know, barely keeping my voice steady.
Where were you last night at 12:47, son?
The detective asked. I didn't like that he called me son. I told him I was at home sleeping at that time, and he shook his head. He told me it would be best for me to collaborate and tell the truth, which only confused me more. He took the laptop in front of him and turned it towards me. A video was playing security cam footage. I saw someone walk down a hotel hallway. Then I saw the guy standing in front of a door, and when it opened, the guy punched the man who opened the door straight in the face. The detective zoomed in on the assailant, and I recognized him. It was me, wearing the clothes I was wearing yesterday. It looked exactly like me. Was I tripping? Did I leave my house and knock some guy out?
Does that not look exactly like you, son?
Asked the detective. I nodded slightly. Who's the man in the hotel room? I asked.
You know very well who that is,
answered the detective. I took a closer look and my eyes widened. It was the missing swimmer. The missing swimmer had been found in his hotel room bathroom with a broken leg, unable to move. And according to security camera footage, it was me who attacked him. 4 hours later, my parents bailed me out. The swimmer was suing, so I'd have to go to court in a few days. I didn't do it, I swear. I was asleep at that time. I tried to explain, but they didn't believe me.
We raised you better than this, Levi. We never thought you'd be capable of such a monstrosity,
said my mom through tears. My dad hadn't spoken to me the entire car ride home. But those clothes, Mom, you took them to wash them much earlier that night, I responded.
I didn't take your clothes, Levi. Stop trying to make excuses. We saw that footage. Everybody did.
My mom sobbed. My head was spinning. How did I appear in that footage wearing clothes I had taken off much earlier? When we arrived home and I saw my brother, it clicked. The dangers of having an identical twin. Evan framed me. I was on trial for attacking a young athlete for apparently no reason, but the only thing I was thinking about was how my brother betrayed me in the worst way possible. It made perfect sense. He wanted me gone, and he wanted his competitor gone. Now I was going to prison, and the poor guy Evan attacked would likely never swim again. At least not nearly as well as before.
Levi Freeman, you are sentenced to life in prison for physically attacking the plaintiff and leaving him to suffer, which was an irredeemably inhumane act,
said the judge. She smacked her little hammer and my fate was sealed. I felt very little. I didn't feel sad or scared or weak. All I felt was anger. I had been in prison for a week when I made the decision to take matters into my own hands. The case was closed, meaning no one would even question that I had attacked Evan's competitor. I didn't deserve life in prison. I was innocent. I knew perfectly well that I was, though my case was definitely insane. My identical twin brother put on my clothes and framed me for leaving a fellow human being to suffer for hours. I had to escape somehow. I quickly realized you can't actually file bars until you squeeze out of your little window. Why do movies teach us all these stupid ways to break out of jail? I was put on kitchen duty for a few days, and that's when I got an idea. The next week, I asked to be put on garbage duty, which was always available since no one liked doing it, and the guards didn't want someone doing it wrong and leaving trash everywhere. I picked up trash all day and filled up multiple huge bags. It was disgusting, but I needed this. Later that day, I had to take the trash to the big garbage containers, and today was pickup day. You can probably guess what my great escape plan was at this point. I needed to be far from the prison before they noticed I was gone, so a little unpleasant ride surrounded by putrid garbage was ideal. The truck picked up the whole container with me in it and dumped it in the back. I was lucky the truck driver had to pee real quick, which allowed me to attack him and steal his clothes. A handsome and young guy like me didn't have any trouble at all getting a ride into town, which is where the next phase of my plan began. Doing the garden work was usually my job at home, so since I was gone, the grass, bushes, and trees were overgrown. Do you know what this was great for? You got it right, stalking. Every night I watched my family. I expected to see arguments, screaming matches, and slamming doors like always. So tell me why I saw smiling faces. I saw Evan doing a cool handshake with my dad and setting the table. I saw them talking all lively and laughing together. My brother replaced me. I was furious. I sat outside my bedroom window and watched my traitor of a brother living happily, a constant smile on his face. I had to take a deep breath to stop myself from storming in and hurting him, hurting the face that framed me. But it was too soon. I had things planned for Evan. Soon enough, he wasn't smiling anymore. He was scared. I would stalk him all the time. He saw a figure outside his window at night, but when he opened the window, it disappeared. He heard voices in the vents and heated tapping on his window. I watched as he lost sleep and got more shaken up by the day. I was even bold enough to shut down the power whenever he was home alone. I would always open doors that he knew he had closed, and close doors he knew he had opened. I left food out on the counter after he had put it in the fridge. I was evil enough to leave chips and crackers in his bed, so when he sat on it, they crumbled. My time finally came when my parents were out of town for the weekend. Evan was so on edge, he flinched at the light tap of a branch on his window. So imagine how he screamed when he saw me sitting on the kitchen island in the dark. I had a knife in my hand and slowly moved towards him, weeks of anger visible in my eyes. Evan staggered backwards, shaking. "No hug hello for your brother?" I asked him sheepishly.
How did you escape?
He demanded. I simply smirked at him. "You framed me," I said. Evan stumbled and fell to the floor against a wall. I kneeled down to his level and said, "You stole my life." Evan started explaining why he did it. He said he was tired of being the black sheep, of me being Mr. Perfect, of Mom and Dad hating him. I'm not Mr. Perfect anymore. Mom and Dad don't want to see me ever again, but they do want to see you. I grabbed Evan's chin and said, "Luckily, we share a face." That night was the last time I saw my twin brother, when he scurried out of the house and promised to never come back. I went and changed into his clothes. I finally slept like a baby. I knew Evan was too much of a coward to come back. I guess I should call him Levi now, because now I'm Evan. Not like my parents will be able to tell the difference. They're kind of terrible. I think what I did was just. My brother stole my life, so I stole his in return. The only obstacle I have now is how the heck am I going to convince my parents to let me quit swimming?